recent release of Pokemon Legends ZA has been making me think of its predecessor, Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is a game I really love. I think my favourite mainline games are still Emerald and Platinum, but it's a tight competition, and I definitely think Legends Arceus is the best Pokemon Switch game by a country mile. While I'd still rank it a solid 8 out of 10, seriously, I cannot reiterate enough how much I actually do enjoy this game. Legends Arceus does have some pretty big flaws. One of those flaws is its plot, which is bland, to be blunt. Yeah, there's some charming characters, and the endgame twist is great, but there's just something missing from it. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was though until I saw someone talking about how the game is loosely based on the Meiji Restoration. Forgive me for the lack of sources on this, I just simply do not remember where I first saw it, but there's plenty of videos on this topic, and I realised that the problem with Legends Arceus' story is that it is a tale about colonialism with no actual colonialism in it. No, seriously. The Diamond and Pearl clans are based on the Ainu people, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, with the Galaxy team being settlers from mainland Japan, who in real life, let's just say committed a lot of atrocities against Hokkaido's native population. And yet, in Legends Arceus, while apparently there was strife between the Galaxy team and the clans in the past, in the actual game itself, the worst that happens between them are people from the clans being mildly rude to you. Adaman and Irida, the leaders of the clans, warm up to you fairly quickly, and characters like Kalaba and Melee, who are jerks at first, are portrayed as clearly being in the wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not actually think there should be a Pokemon game about colonialism. For one, it clashes with the fact that modern Pokemon games are all set in borderline utopias. This is something Gamefreak also recognises, hence why Legends Arceus shows no genuine Galaxy team and clan conflict on screen. To be frank though, I think this was a really bad way of handling it, because instead of just not writing a story about colonialism, they whitewashed a story about colonialism, replacing attempted genocide with petty interpersonal issues. And I think this is a huge contributor for why 70% of Legends Arceus' plot falls flat, because the conflict that would and should exist in this specific setting just doesn't. And the more I thought about this, the more I realised something about the Pokemon franchise at large. And that's that modern Pokemon shies away from showing evil. Back to Legends Arceus, let's look at the actual villains of the game. Firstly, there's Kamado, the paranoid leader of the Galaxy team who eventually exiles you. While he's an antagonist and a bit of a jerk, he's only doing what he believes he has to protect his new home, and you make up with him by the end of the story. Secondly, there's the main antagonist of the game, Volo. Unlike Kamado, he's a genuinely bad dude, but he has about 10 minutes of total screen time after he becomes genuinely antagonistic to you, and then he disappears forever. In Scarlet and Violet, the final boss of the game is either AI Sado or AI Churro, who aren't part of an evil team, and in fact are actively non-malicious. All they want to do is close the honestly kinda small and not that immediately threatening portal into the professor's basement, and they literally only fight you because it's in their programming. They are not a villain, they're a tragedy. The evil team in Scarlet and Violet, Team Star, also isn't evil. They are a group of bullying victims who dropped out of school in protest of their leader getting suspended for a year and a half for chasing off their bullies. The only real villains in this tale are the bullies, who are long gone by the time Scarlet and Violet take place, and the faculty from that time period who, oh yeah, all retired so the current school staff can stay morally pure. There are literally no on-screen human characters I would classify as a bad guy in Scarlet and Violet. Sword and Shield were like this too. There's Team Yell, who are literally just annoying sports fans who have nothing to do with the final villain. And then there's Chairman Rose and his company. The company is literally only fought because you are barging into their headquarters to interrupt a completely harmless meeting that happened to go overtime. And wow, imagine what the world would be like if breaking and entering was a reasonable reaction to a work meeting going on for too long. Rose himself is also more stupid than evil, and only summons the evil hand demon in order to stop a far-off energy crisis, which, honestly, is pretty mild by CEO standards. Looking at all these examples, there is a running theme. There is conflict, yes, but basically nobody is trying to hurt people. It just happens due to poor foresight. Most genuinely malicious acts are restricted to backstories, with the only person who wants to commit actively evil deeds getting barely any screen time as an antagonist before getting dropped. I'd say this trend started in Generation 7, specifically in Sun and Moon. Team Skull were the first evil team that weren't actually the main antagonists, being petty thugs and criminals under the thrall of Lusamine, the head of the Ava Foundation, who serves as the actual main villain of the game. Except, it's unknown how many of the Ava Foundation members are genuinely supporting the cruelty Lusamine commits in order to achieve her goals, and how many are simply ignorant of it. Plus, looking at Lusamine, most of her evils are on a personal scale, not a systematic one. Her main acts of evil are being cruel to animals and being an abusive mother, and that is why you fight her. She's not committing animal smuggling en masse or attempting to destroy the world. In the base game, she just wants to fuse with the jellyfish, and for ultra versions of the game sanitize her even further, with her goals there being to stop Necrozma from destroying the world. Now, let's compare this to the villains of the first 6 generations. There's a crime syndicate, eco-terrorists, a crime syndicate who want to destroy the world, animal rights activists, who are a front for a crime syndicate, and bona fide fascists. Seriously, look at the difference between these two groups. This isn't to say the villains of the earlier gens are all completely unsympathetic. Team Magma and Aqua perform proper heel-face turns in the end, not just giving up, but actively realizing the errors of their ways, and N of Pokemon Black and White fame was manipulated into becoming the villain. Still, all of them actually caused some genuine harm beyond hurt feelings. This also isn't to say that having stories with lower stakes and no real bad guys are bad. In fact, Sun and Moon and Scarlet and Violet have my favourite plots of any mainline Pokemon games. But, well, there was a reason people basically spent the time between Gen 3 to 7 begging for a rival that was actually an asshole again. And even then Gladion and Bede aren't the primary rivals of their games. Because sympathetic villains are great and all, Sun and Moon was a breath of fresh air in that regard, but sometimes you want some unapologetically bad dudes who feel great to crush in monster battles. Either way though, it's clear that Pokemon is moving away from their Team Rockets and more towards middle school bullies, and I'd be surprised if Legends CA changes this. And do not spoil me if it does. The question is, why is this the case? And honestly, I don't have a fantastic answer for that. Perhaps it's because Game Freak heard the fandom's outcry for better plot lines in their games and realised the best way to do that was by making more three-dimensional characters, but didn't want to humanise mob bosses in a children's game. Perhaps it's because they wanted to make their games more relatable to their target audience. In other words, middle school kids. Or perhaps it's due to the pearl-clutching think of the children rhetoric gripping the world at the moment. And Game Freak is scared to put really nasty pieces of works in their games anymore due to the conservatives pushing this movement. Which is kind of wild given how much children relish in the act of committing fictionalized violence. Ultimately, I don't know. What I do know though is that I miss having actual menacing antagonists in Pokemon. This no evil, only misguided mentality is already causing the game's stories to suffer. Not that you should be playing Pokemon for the plot to begin with. Ultimately, in a long-running franchise, you really need variety, and I think Sun and Moon's breath of fresh air is beginning to get stale.